If you're scared of flying, now's the time to go and make a cup of tea. Because Russian air traffic controllers are claiming that this year alone so far there have been 3 near misses in the airspace above the capital. This allegation puts them at odds with their employers, but one air traffic controller, Bulina, had no compunction in spelling out the problem that he's working with.
The biggest problem for Russian air traffic controllers is the lack of regulation for aircraft density. Every year there are 10 to 15% more flights above Russia, and in the past there was minimal cross-air traffic above Moscow because there was a coordinated attempt to keep flights from nearby airports away from the city. Now, that's not happening, and in peak times we have to handle up to 20 planes at any one time. It's really impossible to control, so we work to the maximum of our physical and mental capabilities. On top of that, our equipment is 32 years old.
And he gave details of the effects that the system's shortcomings lead to.
2 years ago, the air traffic radio system broke down above big swaths of Moscow. We had to handle the planes via the emergency talkbacks. And just last week, the radar system broke down. So instead of seeing planes' information, we just saw dots. No height, no speed, no direction, nothing. Luckily, it was off-peak. Otherwise, it could have gone very, very wrong. According to unspoken rules, there are only supposed to be 6 jets in a sector at any one time. One day I had 18 planes to handle in peak time. Was I in control? And were the planes in safe hands? No. It was pure luck that there wasn't a tragedy.
David Owen is an aviation expert from the UK. I asked him exactly what the technical definition of a near miss is.
A near miss really is an informal version of what is defined as an air miss. It's the same thing, but an air miss has a specific legal meaning in that it indicates a conflict between 2 aircraft approaching closer than the normal separation standards.
Why are we having this conversation at the moment? Has somebody blown a whistle about the situation in Russia, or have they been talking about it for a long time and we're suddenly aware of it?
Well, to go back slightly further, in the days of the old Soviet Union, we had very little information on air accidents in Russia, let alone near misses. It's only after the breakup of the Soviet Union and the bringing of Russia more closely into the international aviation field that we realized that their problems were much worse than those which we had encountered in Western Europe. I believe that since this first surface, they have made heroic efforts, or at least they had when their main civil aviation institution was their national airline, Aeroflot. They got their act together very well, and their accident rate and therefore their air miss rate came down considerably. More recently, I gather it's been a problem because there are now a larger number of smaller operators where the implication is that their standards are not really as good as they should be.
You mentioned standards. We talked to an air traffic controller in Moscow who gave us the impression there's a logjam of problems facing air traffic controllers there. The volume of traffic, their fatigue, poor regulation, old equipment. What comes top of the list, would you say?
Oh dear, it's a difficult one because they're all potentially catastrophic. But it may well be that the equipment is a real Achilles heel here because there has been so much advanced equipment developed in the West which makes accidents less likely. If they're operating without this equipment, that is one problem. And almost as serious a problem is that if they have this new equipment, until they become completely versed in using it, that in itself can be a problem. There have been at least 2 accidents, to my knowledge, where they have had people, the pilots involved, have had the use of these collision avoidance systems, but because it's been operated incorrectly, the collision that the equipment was supposed to prevent actually happened.
So do you fear a perfect storm is looming, that it will take a huge calamity before anything effective is done?
It depends on your view of how the Russian political system operates. I think possibly the will is there, but it's translating that into action on the ground, so to speak. I don't mean literally on the ground, but at the lower levels of the civil aviation industry.
As I understand it, your son is a pilot with British Airways. Does he fly in Russian airspace?
The only direct experience, I'm not able to talk to him at the moment because he is actually overseas, but he was telling me that as a passenger he was flying back from a holiday in the Mediterranean on what turned out to be a Russian charter aircraft. And he got talking to the crew, this is before 9/11, and the fact that you couldn't really talk to the crew. He was talking to the crew, and he was very impressed by the fact their English was excellent insofar as they were talking about aviation, communicating with ground control. But when they got on the ground at Gatwick, they were completely at a loss because their conversational English was not good enough to understand the instructions of the controller over where to park the aircraft, and he actually had to act as an interpreter.
This is a very worrying conversation for somebody about to get onto a flight to or within Russia.
I think perhaps the most hopeful sign is that I can remember 2 or 3 years ago, people said they would not under any circumstances, if there's any alternative, fly on a Chinese aircraft. And things have changed completely because they have actually got hold of the problem and really solved a lot of the outstanding issues. But if Russia are able to do the same thing, then there's no reason why it can't become much safer.
David Owen with a glimmer of air hope.